The poem is called Collection Agency. The disappearance of women should be interpreted not only as giving up the fight against the violence of the world, but also as a clear rejection. There is an expression in Italian whose double meaning is untranslatable. Io non ci sto. Literally, it means, I'm not here, in this place, before what you're suggesting. Elena Ferrante. Collection Agency. My writing as useless or as useless as thought, as a headdress, a sharp engulfment collapsing into a stream, the doors open to the rain. Being stone, what bursts forth is interference. What bursts forth is a festival of betrayal. Being stone, I make it tell the body prophet. And this is a text message. Oh, never too angry and bitter. I did not come to poetry in order. I did not come to poetry in order to talk. I came to speak, to accept the labor of speaking, to talk. I came to speak, to accept the labor of speaking. The intensity of the reader, writing as a wound, a guest, a thief in the wound, in the wreckage. Feminization of the problem of lived time, Myung-Mi Kim. I have a new habit when I talk, not when I speak. I have a new habit of asking for verification, an intensity of verification. I ask for reassurance that what's taken place was real, is real, that I did not imagine it. Worse, that I imagined something happened, totally void of the pleasure of imagining. What is it to imagine when there has been an attempt to take the possibility of dreaming from you, from other bodies? To imagine something happened, totally void of the pleasure of imagining, is to realize the potential for a festival of betrayal blooming from within, to feel the possibility of dreaming leave you. Did it happen? The dark, like you, is covered in flowers. The dark did record it as that. I leave work to go somewhere else. I leave work where my body is told to hold it and hold it and hold it. I leave work as the girl possessed and eating an orange. I leave work in June, having spent 2 years working for a body that won't be accountable, won't apologize, or acknowledge his life isn't worth more than others. He excuses himself uncontrollably. I have a new habit when I think of reminding myself that he won't be accountable, won't apologize, or acknowledge his life isn't worth more than others. I have other evidence, but I refuse to enter it here. Ella Longpre. The cure is not magical, a form of research and a threat. It changes the poem for me. Citation, narrative, a physical means for me. I'll write a hymn again. I'll write a hymn again. I have other evidence, but I refuse to enter it here. I did not come here to talk. I came here to speak as the undying. I came here to speak. I have no singing voice, but I am singing very particular phrases while I'm writing. I came here to speak as the dead. I often have sung thoughts that can only occur as the undying. I am talking to others who haven't been listened to, and I am finding this form does not account for our conversation. The personal essay requires a set of coping behaviors that ultimately impose their dysfunction on the form. Last month, I tried to write a lyric essay on abortion and ended up with a collection of vignettes in which women give each other fruit. Ella Longpre. I tried to write a poem and ended up giving each other fruit. A poem. I tried to write a poem and ended up giving each other fruit. I came here to speak to others, to create space, to create a density of failure, to create space or a density of failure with or alongside others who haven't been listened to, the undying, the unquotable, the unstoppable watch. I can't be trusted. I am finding this form does not account for our conversation. The unspeakable watch. I came here to accept the labor of speaking, of listening to the dead, to accept the labor of giving each other fruit. The only quote there is the one that grows. The poems I had written were failures, but dense ones, Renee Gladman. I have other evidence, but I refuse to enter it here. I can't enter it, but it did try to take the possibility of dreaming from me. He excuses himself uncontrollably. I fucking hate secrets. I think this is the part where I address it, where I include a clear and finite date in time. What can I say? What can you say? I can't be recommended. I can't be trusted. What can I say except that reality is between us, my story, my narrative. I can share it. I can't. Sometimes a memory is a tremor of resentment. He excuses himself uncontrollably. I change careers. It seems like I disappear. Poetry. I'm not here in this place before what you're suggesting. I am finding this form. Narrative does not account for our conversation. Narrative, I make it tell the body prophet. What bursts forth is interference. What bursts forth is a festival of betrayal. I did not come to poetry in order, and I did not fucking disappear. The disappearance of women should be interpreted not only as giving up the fight against the violence of the world, but also as a clear rejection. There is an expression in Italian whose double meaning is untranslatable. Io non esisto. Literally, it means I'm not here in this place before what you're suggesting. Elena Ferrante. Collection agency. The intensity of the reader, writing as a wound, a guest, a thief in the wound, in the wreckage. Feminization of the problem of lived time, Myung-Mi Kim. Does this book adhere to a surface? It doesn't adhere to a surface. Am I even a poet? It pours down. A rough form of pollen slips against your cheek. I think I'm a sick woman because I burn my cheek, because I abolish the line. It goes private. Dear L, there are textures that sit behind the world. I'm about to form what I've said before, what I've never been able to say. Before I form, I touch. A poem. Touch that is real and not. I thought this would be like an essay, but in my life, I've never written prose. I thought this writing or this poem or this length would adhere to a surface, but my life, it comes and goes. It comes and goes. It pours down. A poem. Seeing this envelope with what was left of the house. My fear is that the book doesn't end. Or maybe this poem will just be long. Like I have always believed in length. I don't believe we let length speak, and thus a poem. Their prints in the sand are more beautiful than ours. Their prints in the sand, more than ours. What the fuck is a prophecy? I wanted to write an essay that listens for space here, or not. Your thinking and mine. Anger, a wound takes a shape, a form that isn't recitation, endless, just changing. My life, it comes and goes. It comes and goes. I want it to happen here or not. A shape, a painting. No one had taught me how to write. I want to, or I wanted to, write an essay, pain things, an explanation. I want to, or I wanted to, write an essay, brutal and green, but I have created a poem, a song. I have created a poem, a song. I have no singing voice, but I sing. The spectrum is at work too. A poem. There is no word for beauty. My art is the way I establish a bond that ties me to the entire universe. Here I became too many things. Anna Mendieta. Question. What is poetry? Why do you write it? A. I am not the person I was when this book was my beginning. I thought I would describe change, this person, as having been my choice, a consequence of time, of having spent time here, writing. Who is a consequence? What is a consequence? I thought I would describe my fear that the book doesn't end as joy, because that is the type of writer I am. That is the type of life I am. I read pink flowers with no word for beauty. I am not the person I was when this book was my beginning, and I did not have a choice. He excuses himself uncontrollably. I read pink flowers. I read Cecilia Vicuña and thought it collects, seen and unseen, a poem, a secret. How is a citation, something you've never read, a thing you are reading? This writing is private. This writing is public. It is a cave. It is a petty grove. It is a wish, the inexpressible. I have a new habit when I think. It is not forgiveness. It is a wish, the inexpressible. I have a new habit of reminding myself that he won't be accountable, won't apologize, or acknowledge his life isn't worth more than others. I read pink flowers with no word for beauty and recognize it's fucking freeing to the point of grief. Pink flowers, a red gladiolus. Is it a peel? Doesn't it peel? Now that I have this new habit, I think I feel some relief, a note, a long pause, length. It is color, but it is also fur, unraveling and arranged. It needed a fire to release. I burned some salt and alcohol in the backyard and scratched the dog's head. The relief, however, reveals something like the unstoppable, unbearable watch, the unstoppable, unbearable wound, a form, unspeakable, unstoppable. Which is it? I've written it incorrectly so many times now. It has no name. There is a wound that is unstoppable, unbearable, because I cannot refuse to be here before what it is saying, what it cannot say. I do live with this person, these notes. I am now. But what is it to imagine? What is it to write when there has been an attempt to take the possibility of dreaming from you, from other bodies, to feel the possibility of poetry leave you, to know he excuses himself uncontrollably? I did not imagine it, but I ask myself, this person, these notes I live with or am now, if I imagined what happened, I ask this, my life, these notes, I repeat it, my life, these notes, and the question, I recite it until I fall apart when it seems like the answer might be yes. To feel that you may have imagined something happened, totally void of the pleasure of imagining. To feel the possibility of poetry leave you. To know he excuses himself uncontrollably. The sky is a fisherman. The sky is a hook. The sky is a citation of melting grief. The sky is wildly inappropriate. The sky is a citation of roses, a little black stage, unmetrical and fragrant, very salt winds, very clouded sentences. Io non si sto. Literally, it means I'm not here in this place before what you're suggesting, says Elena Ferrante in The Kingdom of Touching, Nourishment, Survival, Extinction, Bold Smell, says Elena Ferrante in The Kingdom of Audre Lorde, in The Kingdom of the Audre Lorde Questionnaire to Oneself. I think, again, of the Blood Barn. I think trying to understand how I, the Blood Barn, even appear, a terrible exposure of flesh, the initiating, implicating mark of an uncontrollable narrative. I have been writing my disappearances, a terrible exposure of flesh. I am deliberately writing the transcriptions from inside me, the initiating, implicating mark of an uncontrollable narrative, a bouquet of tulips, trailing rose-like clusters. I have known this book since I was young, and this sentence, something about this writing is traitorous to all narratives that continue to be projected upon it. If I write, do I reappear? If I write, do I refuse to disappear? Or do I refuse to reappear? I think putting my hand or the center of a flower on pain. To feel the possibility of poetry leave you, to disappear before such a possibility, to reappear elsewhere. It is not forgiveness. I am the wish, the inexpressible, the one with violets on her lap goes astray. I have never been comforted by a poem. A poem. To write a poem. I have never been comforted by a poem. I am writing with fear. I am not. Is it the first time I am weak and livid, unstoppable, unbearable, unstoppable, unspeakable? Is it the first time I've written it incorrectly? So many times now, it has no name. My answer is, my first thought is that this is us, two heavy cloaked bodies in the snow, ragged lumps, their foreheads wavering in the shape, a painting, a pair of cupped hands, a layer of text, sliced or draped. My answer is my thought. My thought is a poem. My thought or the words are named, unnamed, complex forms, rhythms that exist and surround, leaping out of their category and into whatever. The layer, the text, in its most terrifying aspect, unstoppable, unbearable, the boiling forest, it's rotated. Is it the first time? The answer is her pain has always been as private as it was public. The answer is I did not come to poetry in order. The answer is Myung-Mi Kim saying the feminization of the problem of lived time. The answer is thinking of you here. I do not write with fear, and yet I do. It's fucking freeing to the point of grief. I have never been comforted by a poem because there is no word for beauty. I have never been comforted by a poem because I found this new way to quote. I'm thinking of you here. I'm thinking of reading here, of the poem as unspeakable, unstoppable, interruption, intervention, you writing poems, an employee, underestimated it. The flashes that cover the lawn don't shelter. I have never been comforted by a poem. The flashes that cover the lawn don't shelter. Yet some wondrous thing within the mess was held in the cheek, the sight of decimation. I mean, I worship hard in softer beings and space. I'm 32 and booked. I'm 32 and exaggerating. I'm 32 and too personal. I'm 32 and my slippery writing are these, this, and here. A generative dissolve into a life, unmetrical and fragrant. How does public art affect movement? And is there a possibility to create a bond between them, akin? How does public art intervene in our lives? How we react to it has strong resemblances to how we respond in our relationships. Gosku Kunak. How will I heal? I still cannot believe this is happening. Gosku Kunak. The sculpture was carted off. Richard Serra requested that the relationship continues. The other couldn't bear to see any remains. The dancer used the power of cutting a rhythm. They cracked open time, a dimension where no one could tackle. How will I heal? How does public art intervene in our lives? How does public art affect movement? The dancer used the power of cutting a rhythm. The other couldn't bear to see any remains, cracking open time, a dimension where no one could watch, and yet I do. While this book was becoming, I entered a wordless state. I entered again. It is still painful and intimate, still wordless though. No, I won't survive this way. No, I won't repeat language this way, because I do intend to word it, to arm her. I came to poetry to speak, a whole orchard in bloom. I wait for it and I look it. Go ahead and tell me how easy it is to say it. A poem, a story, a reading, a bloom intervenes. Yes, I continue the poem, the story, the reading, the bloom intervenes. Which is it? Cracking open time, a dimension where no one could watch. And yet I've written it incorrectly so many times now. It has no name. It has no name for beauty. I wait for it and I look it. Pink flowers. Myself. I desire a prose. B. What is poetry and why do you write it? The devil inside me, the flower inside me. That's it.